Greetings, everyone. This is Kamisha from Kamisha's Corner, and I haven't been with you for a minute doing my midday musings or my midnight musings. And it's not quite midnight, but I'm coming to you this evening not to give you soap, but to talk a little bit about DNA testing. And a girlfriend of mine had given me some information about this company some years ago, but I didn't really look into it then because I had so many negative what would you call it? I just got a lot of negative feedback and information about DNA companies. So I was just like, look, these things are not that accurate. In order for a company to be accurate, they have to have like this humongous database, and no one has really taken the time to do that. And that's true, but it's not true at the same time. And it's true that a lot of these companies really are not that accurate. And it's true that you have to have a really big database in order to compare your DNA to the DNA database that they have to try to do a DNA testing. And some of the results that were coming back from different DNA companies, because I was watching a YouTube channel like you guys are right now. And what happened was you had a group of people that took DNA testing from these different companies, and their results kept coming back different each time. And one of the reasons, well, when I actually finally looked into DNA testing, I was able to understand why all of that had happened. So my girlfriend had told me about a company called African Ancestry. Now, I didn't really look into it, so I didn't know anything about it. But when I did look into it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is interesting, because one of the founders actually went to school with him. And I was like, oh, I know him, Rick Kittles. I was like, okay, wait, let me look into this. Let me look into this further, because I don't know him that well. But what I do know about him, he seems to be a pretty stand-up guy, not someone who would be, pushing a fraud. So when I started to look more into it, I get a little bit, what do you want to call it? Obsessive when I'm like excited about things. So I think I went to YouTube and looked at probably every video that him and Rick Kittles and Gina Page pretty much did on YouTube. So I can really get an understanding of, their company, what they're about, and what they stand for. So I did do that. And then I was more understanding of, what they do, what DNA does, and why these other companies didn't give very accurate results, or sometimes the results would be different. So what I've learned is that when you do DNA testing, first of all, the company that's doing the DNA testing, it really is based, how accurate it is really is based on the amount of database that they have that they're comparing your DNA to. So if you're dealing with a really small, amount, your database is really small. If you went and you tested DNA, say from different African nations, and say you just have 1,000, a database of 1,000 people, and that's your database, then it's not going to be as accurate. If you have a database of, say, 1,000 people, and people start taking your DNA test, you can grow your database so it can get bigger. So if you were to take it, say, last year when a company had a database of 1,000 people, and I took it again, the company now has a database of more people, it may come back different. And that's what was happening with the people that did the experiment on YouTube. But as opposed to going to the same company, went to different companies. So how their results came back would depend a lot on the different companies, the amount of database that each company had access to at the time that they took their test. So I was like, oh, okay, so that's how it can be different. That's how it not can be different. And of course, that kind of explained it a little bit for me, but it didn't make it so much like solidifying that, okay, the test that I might get if I were to take one of those tests is going to be accurate at another time in the future. So that was one aspect. And another aspect was DNA. Like, in this country, if you're African American, if you're a black person, you have to consider giving your DNA to any company because you don't know what they're going to do with it. And there has been instances where companies have used people's database and did all kind of research and didn't tell the family. And I can't remember the name of the woman who they did that to. She has something in her DNA that some type of regenerative, well, I don't know too much about it, so let me not talk about it. But there was a lady that Johns Hopkins had their DNA, and they did all kind of research on it. And when the family found out about it, they were very upset because the person had passed, and they were still doing research. And then the family one was not asked, was not notified, and then when they found out about it, of course, the family is not being compensated for their family's DNA being tested and being used for all kind of medical research. Which, I mean, if it's done for reasons that are benefiting humanity and community, it would be great. But we all know that things that start off for the best always, not always, but tend to more often than not end up for nefarious reasons. Okay, so we had that I was considering. So I was like, I don't want my DNA in anybody's database for them to use anyhow they want. But then, of course, I have the information from African Ancestry. See, African Ancestry. So, when I actually looked into this, I was able to find out more about how they did their DNA testing. First of all, with AfricanAncestry.com is a company, it's a black owned, it's private, it's 100% black owned and run. It's not, they're not getting any kind of funding from any kind of governmental agencies or anything like that. They're funded by, people like us who take the test. It's a for-profit business that's black owned. So one of the good things that I found out, very, very good thing, is they do not save any of your DNA. So there's no DNA testing. They do not sell your DNA, do not keep your DNA. They do not do any type of DNA testing. They use your DNA to take the test, and then they destroy it. So that was a plus. And one of the reasons why they did that, because these are two black people, and the person, Rick Kittles, who was inspired to, get this company started, was because he wanted to trace his own roots back, and then of course he had the same concerns that many other black people have. What are they going to do with my DNA? No, I don't think so. So when he started, he's the geneticist. So he's that part of deals with that part of the company, and Gina Page is, I don't want to say publicist, but they're both co-founders, but she's kind of like the mouthpiece, so to speak. I don't know if mouthpiece is the right word, but she's the one that's like out in the forefront with advertising and getting the word out there. They both do it, but she does it more so. And that's her background too, marketing. And she comes from that background. So she is able to use her talents and gifts to market this black owned company. So that was number one. They don't share, they don't keep, they don't sell your DNA testing. Yes, that's my daughter. Yes. Oh, you're going to get... Okay, leave that door open. I closed my door because it is hot. But yeah, it's hot. Okay, I'm going through the change, you guys. No. I'm getting hot flashes. Why am I putting this on YouTube? Sorry. Anyway, let me not put that on YouTube. It's already on there. Oh, well, you got it. So that's number one. My daughter's laughing at me. She's like, what is wrong with you, lady? That's number one. So they don't keep, they don't sell, and they don't utilize your DNA for anything else other than doing the test. So after the test is done, it is destroyed. While they have your DNA in their possession, your DNA is not paired up with any personal information of yours. It's paired up with a number. So when it goes to the lab, it is not, they don't see whose DNA that they have. They can look and say, oh, I happen to know this person. So when Rick Kittles does this DNA test, if he happens to remember me, because I only went to the same school as him for a year, and then I transferred out. But I do remember him. He might remember me. He might not. But when he gets this information, he's going to say, hey, I know her. He won't know because all he's going to see is my DNA, and he's going to see a number. He's not going to see my face. He's not going to see my name or any personal information as associated with me. So that's how they kind of keep your DNA private, which is a plus in my case. So that's number one. And then number two, they actually, out of all the DNA testing companies out there, because they realize, in order for it to be accurate, and his point was to be accurate, he wanted to find out and trace his own roots. So he wanted it to be accurate. So he knew that you needed a database that was extensive. So being able to, knowing with the history of, the enslavement process and the history of many of the Black people here in this part of the world, in the Americas, the Caribbean and South America, North America, South America, and the Caribbean, most of the enslavement, our enslaved ancestors came from West Africa. So I don't know how they got the database. I would assume they probably sent, people out there to get samples, but they have the largest database of all of the companies that exist out there. They have a very, very large database. And what they can do is their database is large enough for them to be able to trace your DNA to not just to West Africa, which we pretty much know that some of our lineage goes to West Africa, but to a specific tribe in Africa and where that tribe resides in Africa today. So the test goes back, it traces your lineage back anywhere from 500 to 2,000 years within that age, within that time range, from 500 to 2,000 years. And what they also do is, hopefully I'm explaining all this right. Gina Page, if you happen to see this video and I'm saying anything wrong, please correct me in the comments below. All right, kiddos, if any of you happen to see this and I'm saying anything wrong, please do correct me. But what they do is your DNA is made up. I mean, everyone, you have a mother and your father, and then, that's on the first level. So it's me, then it's my mother and my father. And the next level, you have your grandparents. So you have 4 lineages, not just 2. But on the next level after that, then it'll, exponentially get bigger and bigger. How many lineages that actually make up who you are. And if I was to do a chart, you could start with me at the bottom right here, and then have my parents. And then on the next level me at the bottom is myself. And then on the next level is two lineages, my mother and my father. And then on the next level is 4 lineages, because I have my 2 grandparents from my mother's side and my 2 grandparents from my father's side. And then on the next lineage, it'll be 8, because then I'll have the 4 great-grandparents from my mother's side and the 4 great-grandparents from my father's side. And for so on and so forth, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you look at it like a triangle, it's going to look like this, when you do your genealogy chart and you're trying to find your history. And it gets exponentially bigger as you go further up or away from you and into your grand and great-grand and great-great-grand and great-great-grand, so on and so forth. So what happens is you have this side. Let's say this side is my mother's side and this side is my father's side, and everything else that's in between. So you have your matriclan or your matrilineal side. You have your patriclan or your patrilineal side, and then you have all the area in between. And all that area in between would be considered your admixture, the mixture of everything. So most of the DNA testing that is out there, if not all of them, other than African Ancestry, what they do is they look at the mixture. And so when they look at the mixture, all they can really tell you is what we already pretty much know. And that is that we may have, ancestry in West Africa. It could be a higher percentage of one thing other than the other, but they can't really pinpoint it to a specific tribe in a specific area. So you can say, these are my people. These are what they did before I was snatched up and kidnapped and brought to this side of the world. These are the customs that they practice. These are the language that they have. This is where they live today, or this is where they eventually ended up before they were somewhere else. Because, we migrated across the continent, but where did they end up during that time period before I was snatched? So what African Ancestry does is they either do what's called a matrilineal test or a patrilineal test. So what I'm going to be doing, because I'm a woman and I can't take the patrilineal test. It has to be a male to take the patrilineal test. But anybody can take the matrilineal test, because the men have XY and women just have the X. I'm not a scientist. If I said that backwards, please. If it's women that just have the Y, again, I wasn't into genetics. But I think the women is the X and the man is the Y, and women just have the X. So we don't have a Y gene, so we can't trace that Y gene. But what they do with their test is there's a part of your DNA, so X, because I'm a woman, there's a part of my X chromosome, there's a part of it that has been passed down from my great 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 grandmother all the way down to me. And if I have children, it'll be in my children. And when my children have children, it'll be in their children. And when my children's children have children, it'll be in their children. It does not change. That stays the same. And it's passed down from mother to daughter, mother to daughter, mother to daughter, mother to daughter, and it doesn't change. So what they do is they actually follow that one lineage. And they trace it back as far as they can go from 500 to 2,000 years. And they do the same thing on the patrilineal side, on your father's side. So they're either doing this side or they're doing that side. So they only look at either the matriclan, that lineage, or the patrican, that lineage. And what they suggest that most African Americans do is to either do both or do the mother's side. And the reason being for that is because they say 75% of the time, or 35% of the time, if you do the patrilineal lineage, it will trace back to Europe. And it'll trace back to Europe 35% of the time because of the behaviors of the slave holders and the slave traders. They infiltrated and they raped and they pillaged and, they had children. So somewhere in 35% of our DNA, there was some white slave trader or some white slave holder who, had an offspring with one of our ancestors. And eventually, if we were to trace that, it's going to go back to Europe. So they suggest that you take the matrilineal clan, because if you take the side from the matriclan test, because more than likely that side, I think they said 92% of the time, it traces back to Africa. If those numbers are off, I'm sorry, you can actually go on YouTube and get the numbers and all that good stuff and just do what I did. And, go through every last one of their tests and see, how that goes. So I told my sisters that I was like, after doing all that research, I told my two sisters, I was like, listen, I'm doing this test. I'm taking it, I'm doing the test. And, oh boy, this is a lot of stuff. Okay, I got to make sure. Swab envelope. What? Oh, this is a swab envelope. I told them that I was going to do the test. And they were all excited. I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. After I've taken that. So I got the matriclan test, and I'm going to, I have 2 swab envelopes. I got to make sure, hold on. There's no instructions. I'm going to access close following information. Okay, I probably should have read the information before I started to do this test. So I'm going to pause you for a second. Okay, so I read the instructions. So what you have to do, it says, first of all, I can read it out to you. It says, please follow these instructions carefully to ensure proper results. So you have to do it properly. Complete the specimen information form for the person providing the DNA. So there's a form that I have to complete. I didn't do that yet. And then it says, do not use mouthwash or toothpaste or consume caffeine, alcohol, or smoke at least 3 hours prior to swabbing your cheeks, because you have to swab your cheeks. Rinse your mouth out with water twice, which I just did. And then they say to use the swabs that are provided, and you have a total of 6 swabs. So, and they say use all of the swabs. Oh boy. Roll the swab firmly along each side of your cheeks, approximately 20 times per cheek, and allow the swab to dry before you put it inside the Okay, so we have 3 of these to do. So sorry if you think this is gross, but ooh. So I probably should have took, because I have a little bit of lipstick on. Maybe I shouldn't have that on. I hope that doesn't do anything. It didn't say anything about lipstick, but just in case. Okay. So you have to let them dry completely before you send them in. And I'm in my room and there's limited space in here. Okay, let's do the next one. So there are 6 swabs, and you have to swab your cheek with every swab 20 times. So here we go. This is the next set. So that's number 3. All right, and this is the last set, because each package comes with 2 swabs, and you have to do all 6 of them. So after I take this actually is a test that's going to be good for me, all of my sisters and brothers that share the same mom, same mother. I have one brother that actually has a different mother, so it will not be good for him. He'd have to do it himself. Yeah, he'll have to do that one himself if he wants to get the results. So this will be good for me, my sisters and my brothers who share the same mother, my aunts, my uncles, my mother, of course, my children, my sisters and brothers' children, and let me see who else. And even I still have family in Barbados. So let me see. My grandmother's sister, if they share the same mother, this will be good for them as well, and their children. So they, of course, because my grandmother has passed and I have a really old family, so our lineage is like really far apart. So all of her sisters and brothers are passed. The children of those sisters and brothers, they're still there. And if they all have the same grandmother, so if my grandmother's sisters and brothers that were left in Barbados all have the same mother, then this will be good for them too. So it's far reaching. It's not just me. It's like you take this test and you're benefiting not just yourself, but you're benefiting the children before they come in, so they can come into this world knowing who they are and having a connection to their ancestry. Something that's really is a birthright, but it's our birthright, but we don't necessarily always have that birthright, realized because of the enslavement process. Yeah, so I'm excited. I just have to let these dry completely, and then I'm going to send them in. So, and it takes about 10 weeks to get the results. So I'm going to be traveling, and I will get the results sometime a while after I get back. So I'll be excited to get those results back. And when I do, I will be doing an African Ancestry reveal with my YouTube family. And I will be able to let you know exactly where in the motherland, on the continent, in Merita, I am from my mother's side. Not from my father's side, but from my mother's side. Now, my father's side, I would not be surprised if it comes back with European. I'm actually almost sure it will, because I was able to do some of my genealogy, tracing my family back. Oh. Okay, I was able to, I'm getting a message that I'm reaching the limit for its capacity for filming. But I was able to trace my family back on my father's side, and some of the parts in my history, my father's side, we were actually passing as white, we were passing as Asian. It was really weird. So I know I have some European ancestry over there. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I will be back with my reveal. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question down below, and hit the notifications bell so that you can be notified the next time I upload the next video. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next video with the reveal. Well, I'll see you on another video before then, but I'll see you on the next video with the reveal with this.